Hi, everyone. We're going to get started in a minute or so, so I'll give you a minute to grab your seats. Thank you so much for being here. Well, welcome everyone to the second program in the 2024 Grand Homes and Gardens series. This year's series is called Stately Homes, Exploring U.S. Governor's Mansions and Gardens. My name is Greer Luce. I'm the Curator of Education and Public Programs here at Morven. Today we are continuing our journey through the homes and gardens of U.S. governors and their families with Virginia's Executive Mansion, located in Richmond, Virginia. Virginia's mansion is the nation's oldest continuously occupied governor's mansion. We have a great speaker tonight who literally wrote the book about this special house and its inhabitants. Before I introduce tonight's speaker, I wanted to extend a thank you again to Kathy O'Hara for providing this evening's Virginia-inspired refreshments. I also wanted to thank somebody who I didn't thank last week, but who is so essential to this and every program at the museum, and that's our IT coordinator, Joe Murphy. Joe enables us to have a robust virtual as well as in-person audience for these events. We have about 30 people joining us online tonight. We'd be lost without him. Next, I'd like to express my sincere gratitude to this evening's sponsors. The 2024 series is generously sponsored by Bryn Mawr Trust, and tonight's program about Virginia's Executive Mansion is sponsored by Aaron Foray Design. I'd now like to welcome Jesue Bokikio to the stage from Bryn Mawr Trust to say a few words.
Good evening, everyone. I don't know if you can hear me well, but as Greer had said, my name is Jesue Bokikio with Bryn Mawr Trust. And if you were with us last time, we had the chance to go through the drum thwacket. My microphone, my apologies. Normally my voice carries very loud. So thank you so much for just joining us tonight. As a member of the Bryn Mawr Trust team, I couldn't be more excited to share this opportunity with all of you. If you were with us last time, we did the Drum Thwacket Mansion, and that was in particular super special because I had the opportunity to actually go there in person the next day. So thank you, Megan, and thank you, Greer. Me personally, outside of Bryn Mawr Trust, I share so much with the mission of Morven. So to me, it's super special to actually see an organization that's maintaining that history and then sharing it with each of you. So if you're with us here physically, thank you. And if you're with us digitally, thank you. And a big shout out to my family for watching. I love you guys. But again, thank you so much. If you ever need anything, we're a trusted partner in this community. And thank you so much to the Morven Museum.
All right, and now I'd like to welcome our wonderful sponsor for tonight's program to the stage to say a few words, and that's Aaron Foray.
Hello, I'm Aaron Foray. Thank you so much for coming. I'm very excited to hear about the Virginia Executive Mansion. I am so inspired by the architecture of Richmond. I have two children who went to University of Richmond, and so I'm really looking forward to hearing this. And thank you all for supporting Morven and for being here tonight in person and virtually.
Thank you so much, Erin. It is now my pleasure to introduce our speaker who's traveled all the way from Richmond to join us this evening. Yes. Mary Miley Theobald is a historian and freelance writer. She received her BA and MA from the College of William and Mary, worked for Colonial Williamsburg as intern, employee, and contract writer for 4 decades. and taught American history and museum studies at Virginia Commonwealth University for 13 years. She has written 12 nonfiction books, including First House, the story of Virginia's executive mansion, that commemorated its 200th anniversary. The book commemorated its 200th anniversary. She's also written more than 200 articles for a variety of magazines and newspapers, plus 9 historical novels. In 2012, Mary won a national competition for Best First Crime Novel with her Roaring Twenties murder mystery, The Impersonator. The fifth and last in the series, The Impersonator, the fifth and last in the series, was published this past fall. For fun, she and her husband are part owners of Valley Road Vineyards, a winery in the mountains of Virginia where everything she does would have been illegal during the 1920s. So now my pleasure to welcome to the podium, Mary Miley Theobald.
Thank you. I think the baffle worked. We could see the color. We were a little worried earlier that the sun was going to wash out all the slides. I want to start out by telling you that you cannot buy this book. I was hired in 2010 by the governor's mansion to write the book about their 200th anniversary, which was 2013. And the state published, our state library was the publisher. And I forget how many they printed, but they're gone. So it's been 11 or 12 years and they're gone. If you're desperate for one, I think you can probably get on Amazon and buy a used one, but otherwise, I'm sorry that they're not available. It took me about 2 years to do the research and interviews and finding illustrations appropriate. And it took about 4 months to write the first draft. People often say, how long did it take you to write a book? It takes anywhere from 3 months to 20 years to write a book. So it's a tough question for authors. And for some people, this would be torture. But for me, spending time in libraries and archives and museums is great fun. I had a wonderful time tracking down memoirs written by children who had grown up in the mansion or spent years in the mansion, wives who'd spent years in the mansion. I interviewed, I gotta get the next picture. Oh, I'm pressing it and it isn't working. There, okay. When I wrote this in 2010, started in 2010, there were 10 living former first ladies. Because in Virginia, we don't let you stay governor for very long. And that's one reason we have low corruption. You haven't got time to become corrupt. You can run again, but you can't succeed yourself. So one term and out. So I interviewed all 10. They're not all living still, but it was charming to talk to some of them. I also interviewed dozens of their now grown children and scores of retired government employees, and they all had stories about the good old days to help my book along. And whenever I hit a roadblock, I was lucky enough to have a lot of backup in experts like archivists and architectural historians and librarians and museum curators and civil engineers, editors, people who could set me straight. So it was a lovely group effort. But because I'm sure most of you have not been to the governor's mansion, is there anybody here who has? Usually if I'm talking in Virginia, a lot of people have been, but anybody has been? Woohoo, 2 people. That's amazing. I was expecting 0. Okay. Well, for those of you who are unfamiliar with the governor's mansion, it is a federal style. I'm not having happy, is that the, okay. A federal style brick building. Okay. It was completed and occupied in 1813. It was very large by the standards of the day. It was 4 rooms down and 4 rooms up. The floor plan, they don't get to see it. I see it. Oh, There, okay. 4 rooms down, 4 rooms up. This is all that's left of Alexander Paris's, he's the architect from New England, his design. And it shows the library and the parlor, dining room, drawing room. Upstairs are 4 bedrooms. The house also had a full basement that took advantage of the slope of the hill. To the south, there is you can see the governor's mansion. It's that tiny little brick building right in front of up there. It had a lovely view of the river and the port of Richmond, which is where the falls are, and you can't sail beyond that, so that's why Richmond exists where it is. It took advantage of the slope of the hill, and there were plain brick fireplaces in every room. The 13-foot ceilings give you a really spacious feeling. Restrained dignity was what they were looking for, not costly, but classic. In the fine Virginia tradition of fiscal conservatism, the work on the house was completed in less than 2 years and under budget for less than the amount allotted. Final costs were tabulated in March of 1813, just before Governor Barbour and his family moved in. The total cost came to $18,871, which, and if you use the little inflation calculator, that comes out to about $400,000. And well, it was under $20,000 that was budgeted, so that was a good thing. But you think, wow, $400,000, that's a good price. Remember, that 4 rooms down, 4 rooms up, that's it. There are no bathrooms, there are no kitchens, there's no electrical in the wall, there's no heating and air conditioning, there's no plumbing, there's no water, there's no nothing. It's 4 rooms. That's it. So yeah, that's not it's not a miracle price. It's, that's about what you'd expect. This is the only or the earliest known image of the facade. It was drawn in 1826 before they added the front portico. And during the following 2 centuries, the house suffered through 1 war, 2 fires, 2 threats of mob action, 1 instance of looting, 4 additions, countless renovations, several of which were so extensive that the first family had to move out while the work was done. And in 1830, that front porch was added with the nice columns there. And in the 1840s, water was piped in. And look at this, we have a primitive toilet and something called a shower bath, which was meant for the men, by the way, because they get their hair wet without any problem. And there was great debate at the time about whether hot water, cold water, or warm water was more healthful for your bathing, for your shower. The shower bath was installed in the basement. Gas lights came in the 1850s. Electricity and something called a speaking telegraph came in 1880 that connected speaking from the governor's mansion to the Capitol, which was next door. That was it. It was a telephone with one connection. Yeah. In 1906, a formal dining room was added as per the designs of the architect Duncan Lee, who in Virginia, the name usually causes people to bow down. He was 22 at the time, and this was his first job. It's that to the back there. That's the side you're looking at, not the front. And that's the back sort of curved part. That was his addition, except it was only 1 story. In 1914, the 2nd story was added above it to double the private space, where the first family lives upstairs and the downstairs is usually more public rooms. In 1999, extensive renovations occurred and every mechanical system was replaced, including the heating, the air conditioning, the plumbing, the fire suppression, the security, the electrical wiring, and they lowered the basement floor, that would be this next one, by a foot to allow employees to walk around without bumping their heads on the pipes. Quite a few employees work in the basement. I've been down there many times, and it's nice. It's a kitchen now and a laundry and offices. Security's down there. Oh, that might be secret, I don't know. Several staff offices, you know, whatever. And today the mansion is 13,500 square feet. At the dawn of its third century of service, the mansion has the honor of being, we heard earlier, the oldest occupied governor's mansion in all 50 states. We don't say in America because Puerto Rico is in America and theirs is older. So, it was designated a National Historic Landmark in 1988, and period antiques fill its rooms. They're public rooms. It is not a museum. Every day, its chairs get sat on, its tables are used for dining, its floors and rugs are walked on. School groups, tourists, public officials, other guests are welcomed into the historic rooms. Receptions, business meetings, formal dinners, parties, press conferences take place regularly. And in the midst of this all, it is still a home. So one of the themes I found most interesting when I was doing this research was the rise of the woman's role in the home. In colonial America, it was generally the husband in a well-to-do family who made the decisions about household furnishings. He was the one who placed the orders for the furniture and the draperies and the tableware, and he decided how everything would be arranged. A dutiful wife agreed. Men like John Tyler, Sr., the father of the president, not the president, he was our governor, and he proposed, designed, built, and paid for the governor's mansion. His group, men like him. So money for repairs and maintenance came from the public purse, and the strings were very tightly held by the General Assembly, which is notoriously reluctant to spend unless conditions are truly dire. And you might reasonably think that the short duration of a governor's tenure would discourage them from taking an interest in the House, because in the earlier years, a governor was maybe 1 year or 3 years, not even 4, like today. But most of Virginia's governors and their wives cared deeply about the mansion, and it is shown by the money they spent out of their pocket to keep it up when the state would not. As the 19th century progressed and a man came to be defined more by his occupation and what he did outside the house fell more and more into the wife's sphere. And following the national trend, governors' wives in Virginia took an increasingly active role in the decisions concerning interior decoration. By the early 20th century, they were directing major renovation projects themselves. So, meet Betsy Montague, wife of Governor Andrew Jackson Montague. He was governor 1902 to 06. She and her husband were the first residents to grasp the historic house's potential. Remember, it's not even 100 years old yet, but they were not wealthy, but they had purchased a few antiques for the mansion with their own money. And they were friends of Teddy Roosevelt, and they went up to the White House in Washington frequently, and they saw how the White House had made improvements that taking away those old-fashioned Victorian furnishings and replaced them with stylish colonial revival furnishings. And Betsy Montague felt that the Virginians deserved an updated house as well. But to redecorate the house would require financial assistance from the Commonwealth. And this was not going to happen. So Mrs. Montague did something that no governor's wife had ever contemplated. She prepared her own spending request for the notoriously tight-fisted Finance Committee. And she planned to deliver her appeal in person. A few days before the committee was to meet, fate intervened. During a reception for legislators, the Finance Committee chairman, who was tactfully described by Mrs. Montague in an interview years later as quite large, sat down on one of the mansion's old gilt chairs, perhaps like one of these, because this is the period. And she wrote, these are her words, "He crashed to the floor, reducing the chair to kindling wood, and was later caught trying to hide the splintered remnants in the palm decorations," which why I love this photo, because you see the spindly chairs and they're the palm decorations right there. I mean, so after this, Mrs. Montague recalls that she was received with great sympathy by the Finance Committee and promptly voted an appropriation of $7,000. Now meet the Montague children, Janet, Robert, and Gay. On February 22nd, 1903, in honor of Washington's birthday, the mansion was the scene of a lavish children's costume ball. All the guests came dressed as little Marthas or little Georges, wearing 18th century style gowns or knee breeches and even wigs. Gay Montague remembered the event 84 years later. She said, "I told my mother I was tired of chicken salad and I wanted plenty of ice cream and cake." So using borrowed cake ice cream freezers, mansion cooks and staff spent days, and that is not an exaggeration, spent days cranking out enough ice cream to feed 100 hungry children. Rumors began to circulate that a gang of uninvited street urchins planned to steal the ice cream. This caused the governor to station guards around the freezers, which were being stored outside in February, because there's no freezer, come on, in the house. You have to put it outside. The guards were distracted, watching, they said, through the windows while the children danced the minuet by candlelight. My children would never have been dancing the minuet by candlelight, so I'm not sure I believe all that. But anyway, the bad boys crept around the mansion and managed to liberate all but one of the freezers. That, to me, explains the expressions on the children's faces when this photo was taken after the theft was discovered. You see Gay at the front. She's at the Gay Montague with a scowl. Gay Montague remembers this as the worst day of my life. So to make that nice, this is Gay on a happier occasion on her pony Bobo. And the mounting block is interesting. They put it there so she could get on, but it's still there. They cut it off years later. It looks like a paving stone now. But every time I walk in the mansion on the front door, I'm walking across Gay's mounting block. So it's still there. So now meet Elizabeth Swanson, wife of Governor Claude Swanson, who succeeded Montague. Mrs. Swanson took an active role in the mansion's dining room addition, as well as the renovations of the Capitol next door. At the end of her husband's term, the grateful General Assembly adopted a joint resolution that paid tribute to her, quote, "the enthusiastic interest she has taken in this work, and for the time she has devoted to the same, and for the artistic taste she has displayed." This is the interior of those years. For a woman of that era to have taken on two such important renovation projects speaks to Elizabeth Swanson's remarkable spirit and abilities. And when, unbeknownst to anyone, we found these plates, painted plates at the local history museum, the Valentine Museum, we realized that she had some art, she was an accomplished artist in her own right. I mean, she made, everyone is different, and she painted those herself. So meet Johnny Wise, son of Governor Henry Wise. Johnny loved playing soldier so much that when the Civil War loomed, the 14-year-old boy tried to run away to join the army. His father sent the butler, Jim, to fetch him home. And he said, "Hunt him up, Jim, capture him, take away his arms and march him home in front of you." Johnny would get his wish, though. At a cadet at VMI, he fought at the Battle of Newmarket in 1864 and later became a Confederate officer. He ran for governor himself in 1885, but he lost to General Fitzhugh Lee. So now meet Anna Pierpont, known as Nanny, a feisty 7-year-old redhead when she arrived at the governor's mansion in April of 1865. Her father, Governor Francis Pierpont, who had been governing from Alexandria in the Virginia counties that did not secede, and those that were occupied by federal troops. When Richmond was evacuated and taken by the Union Army that spring, President Lincoln sent Pierpont down quickly with his wife and 3 children to take over the governor's duties for the whole state. Now, most white Virginians considered this new governor a scallywag, which is an insult hurled at any white Southerner who supported a Reconstruction government, considering the widespread hatred of their father, which was very serious. Nanny and her 2 brothers were confined to the fenced yard under the watchful eye of their nurse. So Nanny made friends with the convicts from the state penitentiary. The practice of using convicts had begun in the 1840s and continues to this day, and these men are called trustees. They are model prisoners brought in each day to do the heavy work, beating rugs, scrubbing floors, waxing floors, washing windows, working in the yard. Today, they only do exterior work, landscape work. And the governor's families came to know the trustees quite well. Convict Jack was a particular favorite of Nanny's. One day, Convict Jack made a dash for freedom. The prison guards saw him and shouted at him to stop. Convict Jack did not stop. The guard raised his rifle and prepared to shoot, and Nanny stepped in front of the gun. She wrote, "I obeyed meekly enough his stern order to step aside, but the convict had stepped aside as well. Again, I was in direct line of his aim. Before I could take myself out of danger, the man had disappeared." The guard was furious. He took Nanny into her father's office, which is first floor left, and that's probably her father on the porch. We can't really tell, but and he hauled Nanny in for discipline, and Nanny defended herself. She said, "Convict Jack is a good man. He made my lovely gutta percha ring with 2 silver hearts on it. I love him." Nothing more is known of lovable Convict Jack, and Nanny fails to mention whether or not she was punished, but I have a feeling that it didn't make any difference in her behavior in any case. She went on to become an author and led a very long life. Now meet the Trinkles. Just weeks before the house keys were to pass from Harry Bird in January 1926, that's Mr. Bird on the left there, little Billy Trinkle, center, almost 5, was playing in the ballroom while his nurse was removing the toys from beneath the Christmas tree. Some idiot handed the boy a sparkler. And if you know what happens with a dead Christmas tree, it doesn't catch fire, it explodes. And it exploded into flame. The guard on duty that day wrote years later, "I ran into the mansion. I saw the left side of the ballroom was a regular mass of flames. I sent out the alarm and I did all I could. In the meanwhile, Lee Trinkle, far right, who was 13 years old, was the only member of the family upstairs. Everyone else got out, but he was trapped in the south back bedroom. Helen Trinkle, that's on the far left. I know she doesn't look old enough. She looks like a teenager, but she is the mother. Helen Trinkle got into a panic for the safety of her son. She ended up dashing through the flames in the parlor, up the stairs, woke her son, made him jump from the back window into the waiting arms of the butler, Clayton Setgray. Neither was hurt. The firemen had by then arrived, but their ladders were too short to reach the 3rd-story window. So Fire Captain G.D. Rust climbed to the top rung and prepared to catch her while he was on the ladder. Doing so, she jumped. He dislocated or broke one or both of his shoulders, but he managed to hang on to her ankle upside down, preventing her from falling until somehow someone else got another ladder up next to her to get her and ease her down to the ground. They found Billy later hiding under the smokehouse, and he said, "I did it." Years later, I'll skip that. Meet Connie Darden, wife of Governor Colgate Darden. He took office just weeks after Pearl Harbor. Connie set an example with her victory garden, which you see here, growing vegetables for the governor's table. The war years saw countless servicemen passing through Richmond on their way to nearby bases. But still, Connie Darden's story about finding a sailor under the bed had to be unique. One night, she recalled, our son Colgate came to our bedroom and announced a man was under his bed. We did not believe him and told him to go back to bed. He insisted, so I went into his room and discovered the feet of a loudly snoring man protruding from under the bed. I reported this to my husband, who called the Capitol Square police. A very inebriated young sailor had climbed the trellis outside the open window where repair work was being done, no doubt thought he was climbing the ladder of his ship, and then got back into his lower bunk. After giving him some money, my husband had him put on a bus and returned to his ship. So now meet the grandchildren of Governor Thomas Stanley, 1954 to 1958, who made his fortune in the furniture business. You may have heard of Stanley Furniture, I don't know. The boys were pressed into service during the 1954 visit to Virginia of Queen Elizabeth, the Queen Mother. And after an elegant luncheon at the mansion, the boys did not come to the lunch, of course, but the grandchildren were ushered in to present the Queen Mother with a set of miniature furniture made at the grandfather's factory for her two young grandchildren, Prince Charles and Princess Anne. Afterwards, the reporters asked the youngsters their opinion of the Queen Mother. Young Stanley Chatham, described as a candid lad of 9, piped up, "Gee, I think she's nice. She's real pretty. But there's only one thing. Somehow it seemed she didn't speak English too good." Then, because people probably laughed, he sensed that his remarks could be taken as impolite. He hastily added, "But I guess she speaks English very good just to have been in this country such a short time." There's been no shortage of entrepreneurs in the governor's children. During the Roaring 20s, 5-year-old Dick Bird, he's the baby in the front, charged his friends a nickel to ride the elevator up to their father's office. Half a century later, Woody Holton, surely the mansion's most enterprising fundraiser, came up with a surefire moneymaker. He threw a few pennies into the fountain out front to give the visitors the idea that it was a wishing well, and then he scooped out the loot when no one was looking. His parents caught him and made him contribute the money to charity. Undeterred, he waited until they were out of town before he set up business as a tour guide, selling tickets to the family's private quarters for 75 cents. Only one tour actually took place before the Capitol Police found him and confiscated his sign and shut him down. When his parents came home, Woody received a lecture. "This house belongs to Virginia's taxpayers, so no money can ever be charged for a tour." "Oh, but these folks were from Texas," he replied with impeccable logic. Woody was given a paper route and a lemonade stand to keep him busy. Governors come and go, but the mansion's butlers stay forever, or at least they seem to. Meet Winston Edmonds, the legendary butler who served 12 governors during 47 years, from Governor Lee in 1886 to Governor Pollard in 1933. He was married at the mansion, in fact, in the dining room in 1893, and then afterwards caught the train to Chicago for a honeymoon at the World's Fair. Tom Bannister, on the ladder there, served about 40 years, starting as chauffeur to Governor Byrd. William Fleming, the older man in the back, held the position through 6 administrations, from Governor Harrison in the 60s to Governor Robb in the 1980s. And at that time, his stepson, there in the front, Martin Towns, known to all as Tootie, took over the job, one he has held through 11 administrations and counting. And today, Tootie's son is assistant butler, poised to take over when Dad retires. The butler's job changes with every new governor, but it has always involved doing whatever is necessary to keep the house and the mansion functioning. And whether he's supervising part-time waiters, he's greeting guests at the door, parking cars, maintaining the equipment, or prying children out of the dumbwaiter, the butler's days are never the same. Now, the research I was doing for this book, research is not always productive, and I've wasted hours and days on trying to nail down some point that would let me write one sentence or something. But for example, I was curious to know, when did governors stop paying for official entertainment out of their own pockets? a lot of men said they couldn't be governor because they couldn't afford it. There was no public money. When you had a dinner party, you paid for it. The pre-Civil War, all the governors had slaves. After the Civil War, servants, they used their own. It was on them to pay expenses. Many governors complained about the cost of events, and very few were wealthy. I mean, they weren't poor, but they weren't, excessively wealthy. For example, Governor and Mrs. Montague, Gay's parents, couldn't afford to give a formal dinner party when President Teddy Roosevelt came to visit in 1905. So they decorated the house. This is the picture from the house that we have, with the appropriate banners and whatever. And they decided on this was the best they could do. The ladies were invited to a tea with Mrs. Roosevelt, and the men were invited to a luncheon at the Masonic Temple, for which they paid their own way. So the governor didn't have to pay for that. But I was never able to determine when the Commonwealth assumed responsibility for official entertainment. The Library of Virginia archivist told me that I would be unable to track this down, but I persisted. But they were right. I should have listened. Nor was I able to discover when the Commonwealth began paying the staff salaries, which is in the same, the governor, before the Civil War, the governors provided their own staff, and they were all slave owners. And afterwards, the Army, or right after the war, the Army would have had provided servants, and the military, for the military governors. And I believe the butlers and cooks and laundresses and maids were paid by the Commonwealth from about the 1870s, but the earliest documentation I could find was from 1910, so I really can't say. So now, meet the ghost. The tale is told of the beautiful young woman who's been seen or heard rustling of her silk ball gown, by certain governors' families since the mid-1990s. The story varies, but she was supposedly killed in a carriage accident on her way to or from a ball at the mansion and returns to haunt the house. I spent an entire day at the State Library searching for information, narrowing the time frame from 1813 to 1894, but you can't search obituaries without a name, and you can't search newspapers without a date. And the very small range of local 19th century newspapers has been scanned, not many. And so I searched words like woman, lady, accident, died, death, carriage, buggy, Capitol Square, mansion. I mean, everything I could think of. No dice. So what's the story? I think butler Winston Edmonds, the first one I showed you, made the ghost up in the 1930s when he was starting to give impromptu tours of the mansion, long after Governor McKinney, who supposedly saw the first ghost, was dead. And I concur with the prison guard, Samuel Cooper, who was at the mansion every day for almost half a century, supervising the trustees when they worked. And he said, there just isn't any ghost. What people think is a ghost is really the vibrations, the creakings, the settlings of an old house. However, one day, after I'd given a talk to the Historic Richmond Foundation, someone came up to me and introduced himself as a volunteer at the Wickham House in Richmond, which is also designed by the same architects, Alexander Paris. And the man said, I may know who the ghost is. And he started to tell me about a woman who had lived at the Wickham House, who was killed in a carriage accident right near the mansion on the street that was beside it. And I found 3 newspaper articles about that, the tragic death of Mrs. McClurg in June of 1815 on the hill directly behind the mansion. 5 people were in the carriage, only Mrs. McClurg was killed. She was not young, she was 54, but she had been considered a great beauty in her youth. And I think maybe this is the origin of the ghost story. I don't know, but it could be. So. 200-year-old houses are not uncommon, at least not in Virginia. And the governor's mansion still is quite unique. No other historic house belongs to the people of Virginia and has been home to 2 centuries of governors and their families. And no other house serves as both a residence of the Commonwealth's chief executive and a place of official business. So I'll end this story with one about Governor Pierpont, Nanny's father. In 1866, he issued a permit allowing African Americans to hold a parade to celebrate 1 year of freedom. A group of white Richmonders paid him a visit and threatened to burn the mansion to the ground if he didn't rescind the permit. He said, "This house is yours, not mine. It belongs to your state. Burn it if you think right." The men backed down, the parade went on. And so I want to leave you with Pierpont's words, not a part about burning the mansion, but the house is yours, not mine. If you haven't seen the mansion, volunteers give tours every Tuesday and Friday, 10 to 2. And if you stay clear of Woody Holton, you won't have to pay. So what can I answer? Thank you. Any questions?
Thank you so much. And I'm going to almost drop my computer there. I'm just going to pass the mic around for anyone that has questions so those online can hear us. And for the folks online, I do have my computer up, so if you have any questions, just drop those in the Q&A box. So, Carrie.
This is really lighthearted and quite silly before the serious questions are raised. I'm wondering if there was ever any speculation, if Warner decided to run for governor, you'd have Elizabeth Taylor as first woman?
Well, yeah, he was our senator. He was never governor, so we didn't have him. We did have Linda Robb. The president's daughter, was our first lady, and I got to talk to her. She was lovely. All of them were lovely except one, and I'm not going to talk about that. No. I wanted to make sure I talked to all 10, and one wouldn't talk to me, so I said, if I couldn't, I would have to say that I couldn't talk to her. I sent word, and then she talked to me. So yeah, and then it worked.
Is that a portrait of Queen Elizabeth I in the dining room, and is it an original or not?
It is not Queen Elizabeth I. That has been disproved. That we said that for years. It is a contemporary noble woman. Nobody knows, and it has been moved from its place of honor now that we know it's not Queen Elizabeth. It's still somewhere. Each governor moves in and they can move the portraits around. I mean, they can change everything they want to. So I don't know what it is. I haven't been to the mansion in probably 6 or 8 years. So I don't know what it looks like now. I'm 2 governors back. So, but it's not. There was research and it was discovered that she wasn't there. Yes, ma'am.
Why is Virginia limited to 1 term? Do you know?
Because, okay, the General Assembly wants the power, and they don't want to give a governor, a strong governor. We have a weak governor system. A strong governor would have more power. He could work for years. We don't let that happen. And it does cut down on a lot of problems. But it has its pluses and minuses. You know, you can't, you better get your program started right now, as soon as, because you don't have time to waste. So
if Abigail Spanberger wins, will she be your first?
yes, we have never had a female governor. So yeah, that would be interesting. We've had a woman run, but she lost. But yeah, and that was not a surprise. That was too long ago. There were too many people who would not vote for a woman just because it was a woman, never mind political party, it was just, but I hope we're beyond that. I don't know.
Are there statues or portraits associated with the Confederate States that have been caught up in controversy, conversation, that have been asked to be put away, that are kept? I'm just wondering where that stands in current conversation.
Of course. Well, all the statues on Monument Avenue or whatever, I won't talk about all those. Those have been removed, and that's not what we're dealing with. In Virginia, Virginia was built on Richmond was built on 7 mountains, little hills, and at the top of the hill, this hill, Capitol Hill, they built the Capitol, and that was called something else first, but now it's called Capitol Hill. Right next to the Capitol is the governor's mansion, and there's a big park, and in that park there are statues and plaques and whatnot. Nothing has been taken away. Things have been added over the years. There's now a nice large, about as big as this room maybe, with 5 or 6 women's statues that are about normal size, not big statues, and important women in Virginia history. Don't ask me which ones. God, I can't remember. Pocahontas. And there's nothing removed that I'm aware of from Capitol Square. But yeah, there's a big statue of George Washington. That's our main statue. That's not likely to get removed. Yes, ma'am.
How many acres does this?
I don't know, acres. Let me think. 20? I don't know. I don't know. Maybe more.
I actually have a question.
Yeah.
So I was reading that there is I could be getting this wrong, an interior courtyard or a portion of the garden at the museum that's named after a family that was enslaved at the site. I might be totally off base.
No, that could be, honestly, the last couple of years, I haven't been down at the mansion. Every governor comes in and does things differently. They do a different tour, they emphasize different things. 2 governors ago, they had the kitchens renovated and made it into a little exhibit about the enslaved population. The last current governor, I think, took that all away. It's whatever they want. It's their house. They can do with what they want, and they don't have to, but they've always opened it to the public, the rooms downstairs, and often some of the outbuildings, but not always. And it depends on how big a family they have, if they need the outbuildings for bedroom space or guest rooms or whatever, and they use it the way they think. And then the tours change constantly. So.
Any other questions? I'll do Louise and then you, Elaine. Yeah.
I'm just curious if you can tell us anything. You said it was like maybe 20 acres? I mean, that seems pretty big. Can you tell us anything about the grounds or how they've changed or how they're elaborated or not dealt with? Are there tours
there's
of
a
the grounds?
bell tower, there's the Capitol, which is Jefferson designed, and it's based on the Maison Carrée in Nîmes. And it's had big wings added to it in the 30s. And you go down a hill and there's the entranceway, underground. They're doing a big underground store and gathering area, security area before you come up into the Capitol. There's a lot of concern about security. There are tunnels that I know about because I've been in them, but nobody knows about those because they run from different buildings to hospitals to when Doug Wilder was governor, he's our first Black governor, he made sure he used a lot of the tunnels to get from the governor's mansion to the Capitol. Oh, I've got a good story about Doug. He's still living. He's getting a little old, but he was telling me, I loved his story. He said when he got out of school and he got a college degree in chemistry or something like that, and he went to apply to the state for a job. And they showed him a couple jobs. You could be a cook here, and you could be a custodian here. And he said that was all they had for him, for people like him. And so when he became governor, and that building was right next to the governor's mansion in the square where you go to apply for jobs. And so he said when he was governor, he went out on the porch of the governor's mansion there and he looked down at that building and he said, I think I got me a job now. Like that. Yes, ma'am.
Do all of the governors move into the mansion?
Immediately, yes. In fact, the butler has like 6 hours between one governor leaving and the next one coming. It's a frenzy, and they do it, and they have to adapt to each one. We have the children, any children, you know, it can be.
Is it a requirement?
I doubt it, but why wouldn't you? It's lovely. I mean, you have somebody cook for you and do your laundry and make your beds up clean. I mean, come on. I just thought it was heaven being in there and seeing how everything works so beautifully. And one of the governor's wives that I've become friendly with, actually she's divorced now, but she said that she told their children, that 3 children moved in and they were, middle school age. And she said, look, you got 4 years and somebody's going to make your bed and give you food, and then don't get too cocky about it because it isn't going to last. Yeah. So you just enjoy the perks of the office while you can. There's a huge kitchen downstairs that does amazing banquets, and that's all, of course, new. It was just a basement with nothing in it before, but now it's enormous. So what did I say, 13,000 plus feet? So it's a big place, and that doesn't count the building, the kitchen, the old kitchen, 2-story next to it, which is also from the same 1810, whatever.
Okay. Other questions?
All right, well, thank you. I enjoyed coming. Glad you could join us.
We have one more kind of special surprise for you.
I brought this. You want it?
So are we doing birthdays?
Okay.
You want to do the honors?
I'll do it. I said, you can't buy this book. And actually, I put my bookmark, you can buy my books, but I say, don't buy them. They're in the library. I have fun in the last 10, 12 years writing novels, and they're mysteries set in the Roaring 20s, and they're not excessively violent, or they're not filthy. I don't use bad language. Oh, some of the bad guys use bad language. That's how you know. But I brought one to give away just for fun. And so I'm saying, who has a birthday in March? Only 2, okay? Who has a birthday closest to today? This is the 13th. When is yours? When is yours? Oh, quick, somebody do the math. 2nd would be 11 days. 26th would be, you're the winner. They're in audiobooks and whatever, but they're fun to read. So, that's my plug.
Thank you so much, Mary, and thank you so much for being here. Thank you to our wonderful sponsors for supporting tonight's event as well, and we'll see you next week for Hawaii.
I do, yeah, sure. Happy to. Well, I really, you don't.
Did you love it? No, not